the story writ large. People come to upstate New York, go to college, and then leave. But upstate does have more older people. Once people are settled in upstate and actually have a job here, they tend to stay. Quickly, I'll do New York City. New York City, 1990, had fewer young people than the US. Still has fewer kids relative to the US, but look at that jog. Look at that big increase in New York City in young people. Downstate suburbs, again, fewer sort of young teenage years. Similar in other respects, somewhat more elderly people in 1990. 2010, look at how the suburbs, look at how many fewer people, kids or young people in their early 20s to mid 30s are living in the suburbs than in the US as a whole. That's a pretty big gap that opened there. And at the same time, the suburbs grow the number of people who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. So those people in this chart were in their 30s. What does that say? They stayed in larger numbers, but the younger people left. That's the suburban challenge. And again, for people in suburban school districts, you see that the far left of that chart there at the beginning of another trend, which is fewer kids relative to the US as a whole. There's something of a baby bust in the US as a whole. It's more pronounced upstate and in the suburbs. All of these things have translated into economic problems and into slower economic growth. Okay, well, what's the state doing to promote economic growth? I will avoid having fruit thrown at me and agree with you right up front that what is called a tax freeze is not promoting economic growth, and nothing the state is doing with property taxes in the latest budget promotes economic growth. So what else is the state doing to promote economic growth? Well, the latest budget includes tax cuts. These are the first tax cuts the state has enacted, the first actual net tax cuts the state has enacted since 2005. There have been no real tax cuts in state taxes since 2005. And these tax cuts consist of a cut and a reform in the state's corporate tax, and the beginning of a reform of the state's estate tax. We're one of only 14 states that still have an estate tax. So that produces a powerful incentive for people who have large enough estates to leave. I can discuss that at greater length with anybody during the Q&A, but what basically the state did was it did a tax cut focused on business taxes that when you add up what all these taxes raise, will, when fully implemented, reduce what's now $9 billion in change in taxes by $1 billion in terms of their impact on the people who pay them. Let me point out, by the way, one of the few areas of state taxation, in fact, the area of state taxation in which New York was most competitive before this year, by far most competitive, was corporate taxation. This was not the area in which we're not competitive. We just became more competitive. This includes reducing to zero the tax rate on incorporated manufacturers, which means large ones. Most manufacturers are not incorporated. They're pass-through closely held entities, and what they got was the property tax bill. That's what the state did to promote economic growth. Well, all of this, which is a net positive economically, is impossible to say that it's anything but a net positive in that way, in terms of private sector economic growth. Is it transformative? I think few would suggest it is. Our taxes on manufacturing firms, our whole tax code was already disposed to greatly favor manufacturing firms. I'm not criticizing that, I'm observing that. We nonetheless have had a significant decline in manufacturing employment. Well, then the other solution is world-class destination gambling resorts. Well, by its own lights, it's supposed to create 10,000 good-paying jobs. Let's put that in context. No matter how you feel about it, I know there are people divided on the issue. First of all, 10,000 jobs just in upstate New York is 1/2 of 1% of employment. It's also a lot less than the number of jobs that would be created by natural gas exploration via hydraulic fracturing. Whether you're for or against it, that helps create a context for you in evaluating what casinos will do. Now, How much of a fiscal impact will casinos have that's ultimately felt by the localities represented here? Well, this is where Albany's money comes from, and note, the biggest chunk is the personal income tax. Okay? And note, the lottery is the little red slice up there. It's about 4% of total state-only revenues. This is the non-federal revenues. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, you may have noticed it in your aid. Lottery revenue from the traditional lottery has essentially raising nothing in terms of gains anymore. The traditional lottery has almost completely stopped growing, partly because of competition the lottery division itself oversees from racinos, which are essentially casinos without table games. The red bar there is the money raised by these racinos, principally, overwhelmingly, the casino at Aqueduct in Queens and the casino in Yonkers are the two biggest. And then there are smaller revenue. The third largest is in Saratoga, and then the other handful of casinos raise less money. Not Indian casinos. The casinos authorized are known as racinos, okay? What's the time, Tim? I want to double check.
We're good. We got another 15.
Good. So the lottery, in the era before the 2000s, the way the state goosed the lottery was by continually inventing new games. You notice, to the point where when you come into the convenience store now, you can't find the clerk because there's the enormous plexiglass thing. Are you back there? Right? And then you hate it when you get in line behind that guy who says, "I'll take 10 of this and 5 of that." All right. Well, that boost revenues for a while. Well, all those games still exist, but they don't grow anymore. And we got into Mega Millions and all this other daily numbers and twice daily numbers. All that stuff is what grew lottery, but then it's just exhausted. Quick draw, right? It's all played out. That's why they went to racinos, and of course, racinos cannibalize a certain amount of business from the traditional lottery. So that's where that's been. Well, but the racinos are basically the most profitable side of casinos. The money in casinos is in slots, as we used to call them, or electronic video lottery terminals, as we call them legally. Slots. 80% of the receipts and profits from casinos is slots. We've got slots. That's what this is. That's what the red bar is. But again, all the economics of gambling is it grows quickly in the beginning and then it stops growing significantly. You basically find all the people who are interested in spending a lot of time at the slots, and then, it doesn't grow that much. Okay, now, whoops. I think my battery, there we go. Okay. What effect is this going to have on school aid, for instance? The advertising campaign because of this, and I'm convinced, without doing any scientific polling, the main reason it won was the money is going to go to our schools, cutting our taxes. Okay, how much money is going to go to our schools? Well, on the state side, here is the school aid pie as of fiscal 14. It just grew by another $1 billion, but so you can do a little bit of adjustment visually for this. That's the pie, and note, the lottery and VLT slices of the pie are on here. How big a slice will casinos add? This is according to casino backers, the official numbers from the Cuomo administration. How much will casinos add to the pie? Get ready. There it is. That's the projected proceeds from the projected gaming tax. That's what it will add to school aid. Basically, in fact, in current terms, less than 1%. So over the next few years, you'll have an added boost of less than 1% in the receipts for school aid from gambling. Don't spend it all in one place. This is the county breakdown of the projected fiscal gaming impact. This is the local share because, as you know or may know, there's a formula under which casinos then have to produce some revenue spin-off for counties and local governments. This is the county-by-county breakdown, official budget division numbers. I did this equation. If you look at the counties where casinos will be authorized and you look at the projected numbers, they equate to 2.1% of total property taxes in those localities. So as they come in line, they will represent a sum of money equal to 2% of total property tax levies in the counties where they are authorized. Not transformative. It's something, which is better than nothing, putting aside the whole advisability of gaming and casinos to begin with. It's not enormous. What are the variables for the casinos? Well, where are they? What are the tax rates? How many true destinations will there be? Let me cut the suspense. None. Talk to somebody in the casino business who really is in it. There is one destination resort casino center in the United States, and it is located in Nevada. There are no others. None. That is, places you go to just to gamble, and because there's gambling. The place that tried it, the nation's most prolonged experiment in replicating it somewhere else, was Atlantic City, which failed. At least failed to do it on the scale that was imagined. Now, casinos are proliferating all over the Northeast, in Massachusetts as well. They're already proliferated throughout Pennsylvania. There's very little chance of significant destination resort casinos. The largest casino in the East, in fact, I think in square footage in the country, is in Connecticut, and it's broke. So there's going to be pretty much of a lid on how much revenue is going to be produced by casino gambling, and a certain amount of it will be categorized. And the other big state thing has been startup. I'm not actually going to go through these. I'm just going to say, if I need Startup New York, what a boost it's going to be. If I was going to describe to you how startup work, I'd have to walk you through all of these slides because it's complicated. It's basically microeconomic enterprise zones on or near college campuses, and of course they will pay no taxes, but are supposed to be sort of igniters. It's like setting fire to the newspaper under the logs. It's going to create this growth. I would say that there's reasons to be dubious about the extent to which that'll actually happen. Interestingly, the state commercial you see most frequently for economic development that does the most to promote this program shows people at an ice cream factory and people in a bicycle shop, neither of which would be eligible for participation in Startup NY. By the way, Startup NY is supposed to be largely about startups. Startups also fail. The economy is marked by creative destruction. If the economy is working well, and do what it should do, a large number of startups will fail. If most of the startups enrolled in this program that are called startups that are in this program don't fail, something's wrong. Okay.